Hey guys, thought I'd make a video today of just what I usually end up having with me when I go out on my fish outings. My wife got me this bag probably about a year or two ago, and I tell you what, it is one of those versatile bags that's really good. Anglotech makes it. I don't know if they still make this same exact style, but it's a really good bag. As you can see, it's a camel pack bag, and you've got the camel pack nozzle in it that allows you to take about a half gallon or so of water. Got storage on the back. That's what you typically see in the camel packs. But I tell you what really I like is on what's on the front end. Hopefully you can see this pretty good on the video, but is these front pouch packs. I know there's there's camel packs out there that are similar to this, but I've got several pockets there where this pocket here, I usually have my phone. I've got my keys and my extra batteries for my GoPro. And I like this too because I can wear my GoPro and, and put that in the middle of my chest there. Sometimes you might see that on the video and probably wonder if I'm getting blocked or not sometimes, but typically I don't. But it's a pretty cool pack. Like I said, I can carry plenty of stuff in there. And I'll show you some of the gear I end up fishing with typically, but I've got a lot of these little plastic pouches that you'll probably see when I'm replacing wacky worms and things like that when I'm fishing. But you can put one of those basic, tackle boxes in there on each side, and that's a lot to carry in there, man. I usually end up fishing similar presentations when I'm out on the creek, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. I got one box over there, and then I got another box over here, and got my weigher in there. I got the scale, and so that I can carry in there. And then just in case I get to a creek or a river that might be a little bit deeper, I can fish some other presentations. But you guys have been watching the videos over the last year or two, probably the last year, that I tell you what, I pretty much got everything. This is probably the box I go to the most, and you can kind of see the ones I usually go to, the most, with jig head with a 3 or 4 inch worm off of it. I usually don't go to the 6 inch. That's more of like a lake presentation, but I like using those light jig heads, usually a 16th or 8th ounce jig head. I don't tend to go more than an 1/8 of an ounce because it just doesn't need to go down very far. Most of these creeks I fish in are about 3 to 5 feet. At the most. I mean, you might run into some 6-foot holes, but you're not going to find anything deeper than that typically. So as you can see, I got to clean off a little bit of the dirt here and stuff, weeds, but this happened to be a really good presentation I had a couple fishing trips ago, and I really liked it because the fish just loved the yellow, or the chartreuse yellow, with that dark color. And I'll show you some of the worm presentations that I've used them lately. I actually used this on the last trip I went out to Yoakum, which was pretty cool. Just a shad worm that I ended up being able to attach to a number 4, is it number 4 or number 6 hook? It's like the go-to I go to. I always forget which size it is, but it's real simple to hook a lot of these different presentations on there. And I've been trying to get to these deeper holes and trying to get to these types of presentations with the old slight weighted head on a number 4 hook. And this sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't get down as much as I want to. And that's where I go to these heavier jigs that I've got here. And I've got a bunch of different colors. The colors, I haven't really found a preferred color with a lot of these fish. They just go to whatever's moving in the water sometimes. I mean, sometimes that yellow or that chartreuse head's probably my preferred, but I like using the white and the pinks too. Every so often I'll go to a jig head that's got a blade to it. I like the blade when it's in a cloudier water. I tell you, I've put up a couple of videos of our honey hole that Dave and I, a buddy of mine, go to, and I've got to have that blade. He doesn't use the blade as much, but when I do, it just seems like I tend to catch more fish than he does in that honeycomb, because it's a bit of darker water in some of those deeper pools. So I like using that blade presentation. But as you can see, I mean, I've got mostly my hooks, and then I've got some weighted hooks. These are for Ned rigs, but I don't have them preset. And then I got some jig heads and things like that. This is probably my go-to though, and I've got it already locked and loaded. This is that California green with the old gold sparkle and some black sparkle in it. This just seems to be one of the best colors that I've found this past several months. And using that number 4, it's either number 4 or number 6 hook. I always kind of forget which ones I end up using, but you can use either one of them. Number 2s just seem to be a bit too big. You know, and I try to hook into that meaty part of that worm and just work that thing, you know, just like this in the water. And man, I tell you what, it just drives the smallmouth and the spotted and largemouth bass nuts when it's in that water, especially with that color. I think that sparkle tends to have once it gets to that U shape, it just tends to look like more of a crawfish than anything, which is a lot of what these fish feed off of. But I end up, you know, getting some new baits in the mail. I've been going to these paddle tails the last couple trips that I've been fishing, and I thought I'd try some of these. These are those dark pumpkin color ones. I haven't got a chance to try these out yet though, and I got some of the black sparkle tail paddles as well too. I thought I'd end up trying out, but my last trip I ended up using this shad colored paddle tail, and I never really used paddle tails that much in the creeks, but I tell you what, man, this presentation was really slick. We unfortunately about 9-10 years ago got invaded by those Asian carps coming down from the Mississippi River and now into a lot of other rivers all throughout the country. But you know, the nice thing about it is the smallmouth love them when they're in the shad size, you know, that minnow size, and this really ends up looking a lot like an Asian carp when it's in the water. It's got that silver black color to it, and that tail just really excites them, and they really slam it whenever they see this in the water. My last video of Yoakum Creek, I fished this on a couple of times and ended up doing really good with it. I just, you know, on this presentation, I just, you know, I just hook it right through the top of the head here and then just work it down real slow and then turn it up the old hook, and it's ready to go. Now, I know there's technology out there that, you know, you see a lot of guys that'll glue this down to the hook to stay a little bit on there a little bit more, or they'll put them rubber bands on there sometimes. But I haven't tried this yet with the sideways look to see if maybe that might be a bit of a more of a attractant too, but it just seems to be odd. So I think I'm going to continue to use that head presentation approach and just do it just like this, where it just hooks up through the head. Now it does slip off after a while. This presentation, this will last on here maybe about a half hour or so. And so I'm trying to figure out ways. I think I might try to figure out a way to glue these on and pre-glue them or something like that to where they'll stay on a little bit longer. This presentation, you know, the old trusty, the one I use a lot on the videos that I end up fishing with, this thing stays on here forever. I've probably gone through some of these for like an hour, depending upon how many fish I catch. If I catch some of the bigger ones, they obviously will rip that off. But that's pretty much my go-to tackle. I mean, you can use, you know, you've got so many different types of products out there that, you know, you can use the old Yum. You know, I tell you what, I go to Bass Pro a lot, and I get the generic version. I mean, actually, this is the generic brand that they've got there. You can look in their tournament section, and you can get a whole entire box of about 100 of these, if not more, for like $10, which is a lot cheaper than some of these other ones. But Yum's a good one. I like the Yum because they tend to put something on the tip of the tail on those wacky rigs, and that's always been a good one. I just found these slider ones, man, that are really freaking cool. I love dark blue, black, and purple with that chartreuse tail, especially when I put it on a jig head that's got the chartreuse on the other side of it, or the yellow side. They just slam it whenever it gets in the water. But this is, again, presentation where I'll end up using this where I know the water is going to be a little bit deeper. I don't think I would use this as a wacky worm. I used to. I tell you what, this used to be like my go-to. I would use 3 to 4, sometimes 6-inch worms, and that would be the go-to. I'd just hook it in the side there and use it as a wacky worm presentation. But what I found out was I would lose a lot of them because they would bite it on the end, and I would have a hard time getting them with the hook. And so about a year ago or so, I started going with this little 3-inch presentation. And once I did that, I was worried that I wasn't going to get them excited enough with this such a small presentation. But now that I have used it for the last year or two, they love it. And I was really surprised. I mean, I think it's just because the waters that I'm working in. I mean, I used to use a lot of this Bass Pro Tournament series size. And as you can see, these are a bit longer. Probably 4 to 6 inch in a lot of these instances. I think this is the, what's this one? This is the 6 inch I was talking about earlier. And the problem with it is you can use this. I tell you, if you're in the boat, I mean, there's no doubt about it, you'll be able to get some good fish off the boat. But in these creeks, if you hook that in the middle, that presentation I was saying earlier, which I love working with the wacky rig approach, is that you just work this in here and you're working it in that U style, and it's just going back and forth. The fish are going to have a tendency to bite it sometimes here if they're reluctant. Most fish hit the stuff in the middle, the bigger fish. But if they're timid, if it's in the morning or in the evening, or if they're it's hot or something like that, they kind of just tend to nip at it sometimes, and that's when I don't get a chance of really getting those fish. So that's why I went to that smaller presentation. And when I did that, I just used to knock the hell out of them on these 4 to 6 inchers. But now. Now I just find that 3-inch, this right here. I mean, this used to be an old trusty of mine. This is that black cherry with the orange tail, orangish red tail on it. And I used to tear up smallmouth and spot bass on this presentation. But I just, like I said, I was finding that I was missing more and more. And my buddy Dave, he started fishing a Ned rig and the Cinco style. You have them a little bit longer, but I just like this 3-inch for some odd reason. I did find, this new missile bait that's out. I'm going to try these out. This missile bait looked pretty cool. I've seen guys using it on the video. I just haven't had a chance to use it out in the old creeks yet. But man, does that not look freaking sick or what? Same presentation that I'm using with that shad presentation, but you'll just hook it from the top. Feed that through there real slowly, let it come down and pop out, and then hook it all the way up through the head. And there you go. You're ready to go. Now, a lot of guys, they'll get worried that this will get snagged up on stuff, but the way that we're working this bait is, you cast it out and you'll work it you'll let it drop down, and you'll just work it along that, but you won't let it get to the bottom. You got a lot of guys go, oh, you got to get to the bottom and bounce off the bottom, but not really. If you keep this thing about 6 to 12 inches off the bottom of that creek, and you just let that thing work all the way along, back to where you cast it out from, you'd be surprised. One, you keep it off the big rocks, because those big rocks could have 12 to 24 inch drop-offs in between them. But the fish will look up. They naturally are looking up, and what they're looking for is insects are coming by, or crawfish are coming by that happen to foolishly not stay on the bottom as much as they're supposed to. And I tell you, that presentation right there is really, really going to be an exciting one to use here. Hopefully in the next few videos I'll put out, I'll end up using this one, because it looks really cool. And that's that missile baits brand that I just come across. They call it the Ned Bomb, and it looks pretty cool. So we'll see how that one goes. But I liked, I like just buying random baits here and there, and then trying them out, and seeing, what they'll do for me. But again, I want to come back to this pack, because I got my buddy Dave. He's got just an old basic camel pack, but it's not really built for anglers. And I tell you, this has become my old trust. My wife got this for me, I think for Christmas about a year and a half ago, and I carry this with me all the time in my truck, as well as with my rod and reel. Now, my rod and reels, I don't really end up having a need to buy $100, $200 rod and reel. I just those creeks, I'm trudging around, I'm getting dirty and muddy, I'm falling down, because as I'm getting older, I just seem to find the ground at some point in time, and I'd hate to drop $100, $200, $300 rod and reel in there. So for me, I'm usually just buying the $50 to $100 rod and reel combo deals that Bass Pro usually ends up selling, or Walmart, and getting a lot of life out of them. I usually buy a few rod and reels every year and work through them, and then when I'm done, I don't feel too bad about it, because it was not a super expensive rod anyway. I'd hate to take out a $200 or $300 rod and reel out there and really jack it up. But like I said, I mean, I'm digging this new shad approach. I just started doing that this last year. Again, the wacky approach with this little 3-inch. I tell you, this is like my go-to. The colors. I didn't really get to talk about colors too much. This is that California color I was talking about earlier. I completely forgot about this. I want to make sure I show you. These are awesome. These little plastic containers are perfect for this. This right here, you guys have seen my videos enough. This is like my go-to. These two colors right here are my tried and true. That you got this dark navy with those little blue sparkles in there, and then you got that California sparkle with looks like the crawdad. Those two right there, you'll see I'm using probably 90+% of the time, but every so often I like this one here. It's got this little bit of blue hue to it in it as well too, but it's still got that greenish color, which it's amazing how much the smallmouth and spots love those colors. But I've got those. I've got another container over here. So I mean, as you can see, on everything's on the table here. I mean, I got a lot of stuff that I carry in this bag. I mean, look at all that equipment, and it's on my backpack. I don't have to take this thing off. I see a lot of guys on the videos where they're taking stuff off and putting it back on. I got one with a little bit of pink here. I got the old white. I tell you what, there's one, I forgot to tell you guys about this one. There's a color here, this one right here. This is, again, that shad looking color that it just seems to be a really good one as well too. But a bunch of different colors. And I tell you, I see these guys that don't buy packs like this, or are not aware of them, and that's why I wanted to show you this pack today. It's Anglatech. It's a nice, sturdy, heavy-duty backpack. Like I said, I've had this for about 2 years now, and this thing I'll probably end up still working with for next year or two. All of the zippers have been sturdy, tough. They're not breaking. The zippers are staying strong. I mean, I've had this in the water, I don't know how many times, on the ground, I don't know how many times, in my back of my truck for the last year or two, getting dirty and dusty and everything else. And look at this thing. This thing is still rock solid. So the camel packs turning out really well. It stays cold. I put a bunch of ice in there, and the nice thing is as you can see, this is padded a bit, and so there is some insulation to this, and it stays cold all day. I may have a little bit of warmth that last hour or so. I usually go out for about 6 to 8 hours most of the time. In that last hour or so, the water might get a little bit warm, but that's probably more because it's on my back than anything. But as you guys know, obviously I got my GoPro, and that's what I carry with me. I mean, I think when I look at all this, this is probably about 5 to 7 pounds worth of material that's on my back. I was in the Army, so 5 to 7 pounds ain't that big of a deal. But think about it. I really do think about getting one of these Anglatech backpacks. They're really good. And the rest of the stuff you can see, Gander Mountain, they're out of business. Went out of business years ago. But Bass Pro, I get most of my stuff from there, or Cabela's, which Bass Pro owns. So. But yeah, I mean, that's what I put in my backpack. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just wanted to kind of give you some insight on what I end up using whenever I'm out and about. And like I said, this is my go-to, but I really am excited about using this one here, this Ned Bomb. I can't wait to get this one out in the water here in the next week or two. So, but it's beginning of August. We're still doing this Corona stuff, and that's the nice thing about getting out in the woods. You don't really buy anybody, so that's good. And so I'm looking forward to being able to do more fishing and more videos like this. So thank you very much for sitting with me and hanging out, and I just wanted to give you guys more information on how I'm doing it and what I'm doing. I'm going to try to end up improving my videos too in the future on letting you know how I fish and where I really get the big fish and how I work these presentations. So let's work on that in the near future. But I hope you guys like this video, and I will be talking to you soon. See you.